Welcome back to Scouching's Prospect Pipeline series, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, the Penguins are a team that's in a bit of a transitory stage, I would say, but under the leadership of Kyle Dubas and now Wes Clark, things might get a little bit interesting, but what do they have now? So the way this works is we're going to take all of Pittsburgh's prospects and put them in little tiers and just take a bird's eye look at how things look going into a new season. But before we do, I need to explain what a prospect is in my work and what the tiers mean. In my work, a prospect is a player that's within 5 years of their first year of draft eligibility and they haven't been on an NHL team for more than a season. In terms of the tiers, we start at the top with a franchise level player, which is an iconic player for your franchise that you never ever get rid of. Next up, we have the core tier, which are players that you surround players like that with. First line wingers, top pair defensemen that may not win a Norris Trophy, those types of players. Then you have your depth players, which is basically most of an NHL lineup, second, third, fourth line guys that are night in, night out, role players that are effective and you like having them around. Then you have your maybes, which are guys with a lot of potential, but maybe not enough to get there, or maybe players with a lower ceiling, but might not quite have enough to make it to the NHL. So let's see what Pittsburgh's got. To get started, like many other teams, we're starting in the depth category, and for me, this is where a lot of really solid young players are. Rutger McGroarty, he's the talk of the town right now for all the wrong reasons, but he's not a bad hockey player at all. I do think there's a lot of offensive skill there that could be leveraged and some offensive ability that if someone else can drive the bus a little bit, he can certainly complement that really well and put the puck in the net. This past season, they drafted Tanner Howe, who I kind of like as well as a potential third line complementary energy guy. He's got some skill to him. He's just a very well-rounded, competitive young hockey player, and there might be an interesting NHLer there one day as well. Pittsburgh acquiring Ville Koivunen in the Jay Gensel trade is a very interesting pickup for me as well, and every single time I've seen Koivunen, I wonder if his skating is going to be enough for the NHL, but he's so smart and just plays the game really well, and every single time I've seen him over the last few years, he just seems to get better. So I'm hopeful that he's going to start to take the steps that I think he could take to make himself an NHL player in Pittsburgh. He was the premier prospect they picked up in that deal, so it feels like they really like him there. And I think he could be a guy that plays down Pittsburgh's lineup at some point in the future. Oh, and Pickering is in here as well, who's a player that I don't know if his offensive game has come along as well as I kind of hoped it would, but he always was this very raw, long-term project defenseman that had a lot of talent and just hadn't put it all together yet. And I think he's a player that you don't really think about right now, but after a couple of seasons in the AHL, you very well could end up with a bottom two pair NHL defenseman that can skate and has good length and can make an impact at both ends. And I also threw Mikhail Ilyin in here, who was a surprise for me last season. I hadn't really seen a whole lot of him as a draft eligible, but he looked pretty darn good with Sharapovets in the KHL last year, among the league leaders for players his age in that league, which is no small feat. I still wonder if it's sustainable over a long period of time after having seen him play, but the trajectory looks very solid for him, and so I upgraded him into this tier based on what I saw of him with Sharapovets and what there might be, especially in terms of an offensive player there. Moving down to the maybes category, there are some interesting players down here as well. Harrison Brunick was a player that they drafted this past season who I think has potential but may not have quite enough to get to the NHL, but he does have a lot of very interesting tools. Cruz Lucius, Vasily Ponomaryov, and Kirill Tankov are very interesting, skilled forwards who I think have a good amount of potential, but I do wonder about the potential to get there as well, similar to a guy like Harrison Brunick. I'm always a little more hesitant with goaltenders, but I do really like what I've seen out of Joel Blomqvist and especially Sergei Murashov over in Yaroslavl. I do think Murashov is, like many other Russians, going to be a longer-term project that you stash over there until he's ready to come to the NHL, but there could be an NHL job ready for him in Pittsburgh in relatively short order, and all he has done since they drafted him was save pucks. So he's been very interesting, Blomqvist has been very interesting, and I think that all things considered, Pittsburgh has a pretty decent pipeline when you look outside of the everyone else category. And down at the bottom, we have everybody else, and this is just literally everyone else. There are some players here that I think might buck the trend and earn themselves an upgrade. Max Swanson having a couple of really good years in college. I'm a little pessimistic, but if he becomes a very high-end NCAA scorer, I could see it. I like the idea of what Zamplante brings to the game, but I'm not sure he's an NHL level guy, but I love the mind that he has for the game. There are guys like Emil Järventie, Juna Väisänen, as well as goaltender Taylor Gauthier, who have had their moments as well and may very well earn their way out of the basement of this pyramid as well. Overall, I mean, Pittsburgh's a team that's been trying to compete in the NHL for the last few years, and they've traded a lot of draft picks. We'll see what happens in the coming years, but all things considered, I think they've ended up with a decent selection of young players that could round out their roster moving forward, with a fair amount of really high potential that who knows what will happen. Even in net, they have some interesting options, and I don't really mind where Pittsburgh is, even though they're at the tail end of this video series. We'll see how things go under a new regime and a new scouting director for the next couple of years. So that's it for the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and if you really liked it, you can go to Scouching.ca and subscribe there, where you'll get access to a private Discord server, as well as plenty of cool data tools for drafted and undrafted prospects, and tons of other cool stuff you can check out there. So you can go to Scouching.ca and get subscribed. And with that, we're done with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and tomorrow we're going to take a look at the Tampa Bay Lightning.